What is up, PGF Nation? We are back with boom or bust prospects. Every draft has them. Guys with elite traits, but massive red flags. There are guys that are either going to make their GMs look brilliant or get people fired. We're not talking about safe prospects today. We're not talking about high floor guys. This is all about low floor, high ceiling prospects. I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. Alex, let's kick this off. Who do you want to start at the top of your list of boom or bust guys in this 2026 NFL draft?
Well, that's going to be Ty Simpson. You can't continue on doing what we've been doing for all of the years that we've been watching football and see a player get drafted in the first round, only playing good for half the season, only having one full season started, and then drafting them in the first round. Now, we know that it's happened a few times, but we know that it's successfully happened more than I guess I would say at least the 20 to 25 years that we've been watching, perhaps just once. And that's Cam Newton. And Cam Newton is the one outlier. Cam Newton to step him aside because he was an outlier starter at that position. We had never seen anybody built or set up like Cam Newton in our lives. So let's take him and put him to the side. Now let's put everybody else there.
He's the ultimate outlier, right? We're talking about a guy who was an incredible athlete. So to your point about Ty Simpson, it would be one thing if Ty Simpson ran a 4.3, was 6'5", 245 pounds, right? Maybe we could have a different conversation here, but that's clearly not the conversation we're having about Ty Simpson.
Right, yeah. So, he's a guy that apparently needed to stay. Now, obviously, I understand. Now, let's get two things straight. We understand why some of these guys are coming out. Like I said from the jump, Anthony Richardson wasn't ready. However, if somebody tells you you're going to go top 5 in the NFL, I understand you coming out. This is not the conversation. The conversation is, should I draft you with my number one? Now, obviously, if he gets to go to somebody like Sean McVay, if he gets to go to Andy Reid or Kyle Shanahan, you probably bend the wand in a different direction and say, okay, he's probably going to have a better chance. But he's not. He's not going to get drafted to any of those guys. So
not likely.
Yeah, not likely. So with Ty Simpson, he started out hot, and then around week 7 to 8, everybody started to figure him out. He hadn't been able to go through the whole playbook, and he started to slow down and just got worse. Now, Alabama kept winning because they're Alabama, not because of Ty Simpson. So you had a problem where you saw that he needed more coaching. Matter of fact, the year before, remember, Jalen Milroe came in and won the starting position over Ty Simpson. And that quarterback, I believe he went the second or third. I think he was drafted in the third round, if I'm not mistaken.
Third round of the Seahawks, I believe. Yeah.
Right, third round to the Seahawks. Jalen Milroe went, and that's because he has an outlier gift in terms of that he can run. So there's outlier things that attracted. Ty Simpson doesn't have any of these things. Now, I understand Dan Orlovsky saying what he's saying, but Ty Simpson is not going to be able to come in here, at least for the first 2 years, and be able to take on, more than likely the first 2 years, and not be able to take on an offense. So drafting him in the first round, perhaps even the second round, is buyer beware out the gate.
Yeah, and another comp that I keep hearing for this guy is Brock Purdy, and I hate that comp. Alex, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, look, now, Brock Purdy was criminally underrated, obviously, going as the last pick in the draft. However, Brock Purdy was a 4-year starter at Iowa State. So we can talk about the comp as far as stylistically, maybe from a size and talent standpoint, but the starts weren't even close. We're talking about a guy who had a ton of experience playing in the Big 12 versus a guy, like you said, had 15 starts at Alabama. Look, is he talented? Yes, he's a talented guy. And I can see why he was a former 5-star recruit. This kid can spin it. He's got talent. And he actually understands the game at a pretty high level considering the limited amount of starts. But the inconsistent tape, the smaller frame, the biggest concern going back to it, once again, Bill Parcells would take this guy off his board in a second. We know that. 1-year starter, started off, like you said, really hot, got kind of banged up midway through the year, dealing with some injuries. He's terrible under pressure. That to me is a huge red flag. The arm talent is fine. He has a good arm, but I'd say it's solid. It's not special. He doesn't have a cannon. Defenses didn't always feel threatened by his ability to push the ball down the field. The accuracy is good. The ball placement, a little bit hit or miss, but I'd say it's good. He also goes to the check down a little too quick, kind of looks for the easy out too quickly. The processing is there, but I think he still has to be a little more patient. He's a developmental quarterback. There's no way around it. He's a developmental guy with limited traits. So to your point, he's not an outlier like a Cam Newton. He's not an outlier like a Josh Allen, who was a guy who had red flags, but he had all these traits, right? Big, athletic, can run. Like you could at least look at a guy like Josh Allen, a guy like Lamar, who was a developmental first rounder, that you can look at those guys. Okay, they have some special traits. There's something to work with here. This guy doesn't have any special traits. So to me, he's a mid-level starter at best. And I'm talking about his ceiling here. He's a mid-level starter at best, and his floor is a backup who's out of the league in 5 years.
Yep.
So you don't take guys like that in the first round, and someone might pull the trigger on this guy. In a weak quarterback class, it wouldn't shock me if someone trades back into the first, a team like Arizona, a team like the Jets. I'm circling those two dumpster can franchises to make a terrible decision and take this guy late. I don't get it, man. But hey, let's move on here. We've got plenty of guys to get to. I've got one guy. This will be quick, but he had to make the list for me, Alex, and it's Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. There's not a whole lot to say about this guy because, look, he's widely considered by most, maybe the most talented wide receiver in this class. Big time talent. The problem is that injury history is a huge, huge red flag. And for me, it's too big of a risk to take this guy in the first round. And somebody probably will. And unfortunately, he's probably going to be one of those stories where we look back in 5 years and someone's going to say, hey, do you remember that Jordyn Tyson guy?
He's Christian Watson. He's going to be Christian Watson.
Right. You know what? It's not a bad comp where a big X receiver, where a big playmaker type that flashes, but is just on IR way too much. I hope that's not the case. I'm obviously not rooting for that. I hope Jordyn Tyson gets healthy and has a great NFL career. But man, those are big red flags because it's not just one injury. It's a hamstring injury that just keeps lingering. It's collarbone. It's this, it's that. Some guys just aren't built to play this sport long term, and I really question if he is.
Right. And just real quick. So when I say Christian Watson, I'm not talking about comparing their talents or anything. I'm saying he's going to Christian Watson, since he's been in the league, he played 14 his first year, then 9, then 15, then 10. So it's like you can never get the full 17 games. You can never get to the full 17 games. He's always out. That's what I mean. You can't count him. Now, again, if you dropped him in the second round, I can see the high level if you could get him to stay healthy. But I don't believe he gets to the second contract as a consistent player. Now we get to my second player. My second player is Ruben Bain. Now, I know what the tape says. I know that he is a dog, and I'm not even discounting him being a dog, but his measurables. And then when you also take into the fact that we don't know what these offensive linemen are in college, and I'll get to that in a moment, but we don't know what these offensive linemen are in college. So when he translates to the to the NFL, how is he going to look against a straight left tackle or a straight right tackle? He's too small to play inside. He's going to have to continuously play on the outside. I don't see with his measurables him being let's say a top 12, top 15. Hell, listen, if he goes 25 to 32, I won't say anything because any of those could be second round picks. So whatever. But if he goes 24 and above, I don't think you're going to get the production that you saw in college translate over to the NFL. And I don't care who's coaching him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you completely. Ruben Bain is the epitome of a boom or bust prospect because if he ends up being a boom player, he will be the ultimate outlier because of, like you said, the measurables are alarming. And look, the tape is fantastic. Most analysts consider this guy a blue chip prospect. A lot of people think he has one of the highest floors in this class, or a guy who can slide along the defensive line. He does have a relentless motor. He's got violent hands. He's a dog. I mean, like you said, I love his tape. I love his tape. I think we all love his tape. But there's some real concerns here. To your point, Alex, he's 6'2", 263. So he's a little undersized for a traditional defensive end. I'm concerned about his ability to anchor against these massive NFL tackles who are longer, who are faster. And there's a very short list of edge rushers with his specific arm length and weight who have succeeded in the NFL. He would be the ultimate outlier. We have not seen a guy with sub 31-inch arms have a double-digit sack season in over 25 years in the NFL. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that all these scouts and all these GMs keep these numbers, and there's a reason they track these things. There's also a lot of noise about him being slow, and that there's a lack of what you would consider an elite twitch. So my question is he actually that safe of a prospect? I don't know he is that safe, because there's a chance that this guy really doesn't pan out and someone takes him in the top 10, like a lot of people are projecting, and this just ends up being a really bad pick, or he becomes the ultimate outlier, and we're looking back in 2 or 3 years, and he's a Pro Bowl level player, which, look, his tape's good enough, he could be, but he's going to have to overcome these things to be able to be that guy. And like I said, he will be the ultimate outlier. There is no doubt about it. I think his best bet as far as being successful is moving in and playing a 3-tech in a 4-3. Mm-hmm. I think if you move him inside, he has a chance against, going up against more guards and centers who don't have as much length, don't have as quick a feet. Some of those guys, I think he has a better chance of being an inside pass rusher, run defender at the next level. On the edge, I have real concerns. I have real concerns on the edge. And do you take that guy in the top 10, top 12? I just don't know.
Let me ask you a question real quick, because this week we've gotten some news about Ruben Bain off the field. It doesn't sound like, I haven't heard anything that said he was drinking, that said he was racing, anything. It just sounded like a regular car accident in which the young lady unfortunately lost her life. Her family doesn't want to speak on it. But do you think that, and this happened in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, do you think that someone has put this out so that he could drop and that maybe they could get him, i.e. the Cowboys get him with their second pick coming up in the draft? With their second first-round pick, excuse me.
I heard Todd McShay talking about this, and what he said, which was basically everybody in the industry already knew about this. Scouts knew about it. GMs knew about it. Basically, this was old news. And so this was already built into his draft grade for these teams, is the understanding that I have heard. And that NFL draft analyst, this podcaster who I won't even mention his name, I think he put it out there for clicks. Mm-hmm. I think he was holding on to this story, knowing that, look, if I drop this 10 days before the draft, when everybody's talking about the draft, everyone's focusing in on draft coverage right now, he's going to put it out there. And the way he dropped it, he made it seem like it was a breaking story, like a breaking news story, and it's not. Yeah, I think this is a perfect example, Alex, of someone trying to get clicks, someone trying to get downloads on their podcast, someone trying to make a name for themselves in the draft space, who was clearly holding on to the story and dropped it at the perfect time where it would stir up all kinds of noise and get people to pay attention to what he's doing, and making it seem like a news story that just broke when it came out in 2024, and a lot of these people already knew about it. And that's what Todd McShay basically called him out on Twitter. I don't believe this was a story that came out to try to tank his stock. I think this is more of a media-driven story drop.
Okay. Now, these guys should not go 24 and above in this situation. But I will say this. Now, this is not a person. This is basically, for the most part, the upper echelon of the group. And I'm talking about the offensive line, specifically the offensive tackles of this group. If you talk about Spencer Fanu, if you talk about Francis from Miami,
Maui Noah,
Kadyn Proctor, Monroe Freeling to a certain extent, but I'll talk about Monroe in a moment. These guys, to me, are not tackles. They're just not. I know they're They're listed as tackles, but these are all guys, and I'm sorry, we're going to talk about Will Campbell that we saw last year with the arms and couldn't block anything. Now, he may clean it up or they may have to kick him inside. Anybody remember Robert Gallery? I'm a Raiders fan. I remember clearly he had to be kicked inside. When you don't have these guys with these measurables, they just simply, for the most part, and I would say probably 90 to 95% of the time, they simply don't work, and they're going to go and be guards. Kadyn Proctor, he's huge. He's going to be a guard. He's going to be a guard. Now, Francis and Spencer, they're right on the edge. I think the measurement is 34. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 34. I think it's 34. They're at like 33. I think Spencer's at 32 and a half.
32, I think.
Yeah, I think it's at 32. Those 2 inches, they mean a lot when you have to face Max Crosby, when you have to face Myles Garrett, when you have to face Will Anderson. The thing is, these guys don't stop coming on. These are what everybody's looking for. Everybody's looking for these edge rushers, and they have all of this, the characteristics to be an edge rusher. And when you don't have the arms to get your push, to be violent with your hands, you're going to have a problem. You can be violent all you want to, but you're going to come up short, essentially and realistically, when you put your arms out and that guy has swim tackled you or spun around you and gone after the quarterback, because you're just simply not built to task to take on some of the edge rushers in the NFL.
No, you're absolutely right. And I want to focus in on one of these guys because I think you're right. I think Francis Maui-Noa, I think, has a chance to be a starting right tackle. I don't know if he has the footwork and the athleticism to play left, but you're right. There's a decent chance he plays guard at the next level. Spencer Fano is a guy they've already openly talked about is maybe moving into guard or even center. He was taking snaps at the combine because they wanted to see how it looked. So clearly there's some NFL talent evaluators that aren't sure about him playing on the outside. Kadyn Proctor is the one guy I really want to circle, though, because he has the size to play tackle at the next level. 32.5-inch vertical, a 10.9 broad at 352 pounds. Those are historic numbers. I mean, for a guy his size, he is really athletic. I mean, they were throwing screen passes to this guy at Alabama. I mean, you want to talk about a big, huge athlete. There's a reason people are so enamored with Kadyn Proctor. Gap, power run blocking schemes is where he excels. He's got 3 years of starting experience at left tackle in the SEC. I understand why people are circling Kadyn Proctor. Like, I get it. But despite having the length and the size and the frame, you got to look at things like the fact that I think his technique needs a lot of work. And because he's so massive, he's actually so big that he really struggles to mirror those quick, twitchy edge rushers. He struggles with balance, struggles with footwork, keeping his center of gravity over his feet, and his weight management has been an issue. There was a story that he showed up to practice, spring practice at Alabama at 400 pounds. So weight is a serious issue here. And look, I'm not trying to pick on the guy with the weight management issue, but when you have a weight management issue and you're trying to be a professional athlete, I have to question the discipline. I have to question, how bad do you really want to be a pro athlete if you're having trouble managing your weight? And is it going to be an issue at the next level? He also plays with high pads, and like I said, the technique problems with the feet and hand placement. There's a lot of red flags. So even though he's a big, towering athlete, he's got some real red flags. And so this is going to come down to a traits versus technique debate. Why? And that's why I have him circled as a boom or bust guy for sure in this class.
Right. And just really quick, and it's why, and when we have another pod, we'll talk about people that are going up. It's why I keep mentioning Max Ihenacho. I think he's going to continue to climb and probably be, because and Monroe Freeling has the size, but he hasn't had enough starting. So you're going to take a guy that's rough around the edges and try to build him up. But I think Max Ihenacho right now is the best tackle that's ready to start right away coming out of college.
Yeah, I think him and Monroe Freeling, to your point, are both guys who clearly have some developing to do. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But they're two of the only prospects that people are looking at in the first round who have legit left tackle traits. Because to your point, a lot of these other guys don't have the size, the footwork, or they're missing some pieces that you can look at and say, okay, I could see them being a starting left tackle for the next 8 to 10 years. Where those guys, if they develop, or I should say continue to develop, I think both those guys have a much better case to be made. My next guy, Alex, is the definition of a boom or bust prospect, and that's Keldric Faulk, the edge defender out of Auburn. Physical profile that teams look for, prototypical NFL size, 6'6", 280, long arms, almost 35-inch arms, tested really well to combine, 35-inch vertical, 9'9" broad jump. I mean, he has elite size and explosive traits, and I understand why so many NFL teams are enamored with this guy, but here's the problem. After a 7-sack season in 2024, his production fell off a cliff in 2025. Only 2 sacks, only 5 tackles for a loss, and 50% of his quarterback pressures were unblocked. And he only had an 11.5 pass rush win rate. That's not very good. I don't think he has elite get off. I think it's just very average. I don't see a quick, twitchy guy as far as a pass rusher. He lacks a counter move. I mean, it's all bull rush. So here's my question. Is he the next Eric Armstead or the next Tyree Wilson?
I don't know. And I don't know. And I think, and this is just me. I actually just looked at this recently. It's interesting, and we can talk about this on another part. It's interesting when you look at Tyree Wilson and you look at Jalen Carter. And you don't get too far into the weeds, but it's interesting if you look up those two stats. But we'll talk about that on another podcast. I think he'll be more Tyree Wilson at the end of the day. I think he'll be more Tyree Wilson.
Yeah, Tyree, he kind of screams this year's Shamar Stewart, doesn't he? A guy that we also flagged last year, Alex, as a boomer bust guy who, look, had the traits, physical traits, but didn't have the production. And look, if you can't beat college players at the line of scrimmage, what makes me think you're going to go to the NFL and start beating these guys? It's a big red flag for me. It really is. Now, sometimes these guys with big-time traits, sometimes they develop, and sometimes they become really good players. But this is why they're boom or bust prospects.
Yes. So I have one more guy, and he's a guy that really kind of burst out during the combine workouts. And this is where you get into the trouble at when these guys, they show inconsistency throughout the year. You don't know what you're looking at on tape, but then they come to the combine, you see them, and they look great, and they kind of blow past you with all the testing that they do. And this is Caleb Banks, my team, Florida. Listen, I could be wrong about any of these guys, but when I tell you about a player from my school, I'm 99% right 99% of the time. Caleb Banks is not a first-round pick. Now, if you want to draft him back in second round, sometime in the third round or later, go for it all day long. But Caleb Banks and what you saw in the combine versus what you see on tape are two totally, completely different things. His mind and where he's at, and we actually had a good defense last year. Now our offense fell off the wagon, but we actually had a very good defense last year. And he was spotty throughout the entire year. He was here some games, out not out, but out in terms of mentally out, or he was here some plays, out some plays again mentally. There was never a run where we could say, yo, did you see games 2 through 8 or games, we never got that from him. So this is a guy that I have to take that into consideration, because this is the only game, at least of the 3 major sports, where you practice more than you actually play. And if your mind isn't into it, you will get lost. You just simply get lost in the sauce. You can't just be like, all right, I'm going to take it easy through practice and show up on game day. Very few players have been able to do that, and those very few players have elite traits. Caleb Banks does not have that. You need a guy that's going to be, that's going to hold balls to the wall, that's going to go hard on the field, off the field, in the classroom, out of the classroom, that's going to go hard all the way through for him to reach the level that you will think you'll be drafting for him if you draft him in the first round.
Yeah, look, the only thing I'm going to push back on it is I think he does have elite traits. I mean, the frame at 6'6", 327, 35-inch arms. I think that's what people are falling in love with. He's twitchy. He has power. There's things you see on tape when he flashes that just look like a first-round pick, for sure. I mean, quick off the ball size, immediately can push guards back into the backfield. But to your point, not a finisher, gets pushed off his path way too often. He's got the injury concerns, inconsistent tape, and I don't like the motor at all. I mean, it looks like there's stretches where he is just not engaged and not getting after it. And we saw that at the Senior Bowl, Alex. At the Senior Bowl, he had snaps at practice where he looked like Chris Jones. And then he had other plays where it looked like he didn't belong at the Senior Bowl, and he's getting pushed around. So, this is a guy that if I think before the foot injury, he had a legit chance to be a first-round pick. I think it's going to keep him out of the first, but even in the second, like someone's going to take a flyer on this guy early. He's not going to get past the second round because the talent is there. Someone's going to fall in love with this guy and maybe even take him late in the first, believe it or not, especially in a weak defensive tackle class. But man, buyer beware, because this is another guy that I'm with you, Alex. He is the epitome of a boom or bust prospect for sure. I've got one more guy, Alex, I want to get to. Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina, the corner out of South Carolina, flashes high-end traits for sure, but a guy who lacks that consistency. His tape is really up and down, kind of has a lean frame, so I think there's some durability concerns there, some matchup concerns versus bigger, more physical receivers. A little bit slow as far as processor and coverage. Athleticism, look, he has really good athleticism. It helps him to recover, but he's got to work on his technique. Underdeveloped ball skills, a little bit vulnerable in zone, off coverage. The tackling is kind of all over the place, misses a lot of tackles that he should have. This is a guy that the question for him is going to be, can you coach him up? Because I think a lot of his issues are technique and more tape, more reps, better coaching, getting him in the right system. I think he has high-end traits, but there's enough red flags with Brandon Cisse that, this was a guy a lot of people thought might be the third corner in this class. The more tape I watch, I don't know. He could fall into the second round. I'm just not sure. I think late first is kind of the sweet spot for him. If he falls late first to a team like Seattle with a great defensive coach that will know how to coach him up and know how to utilize his skills, he could be in a great situation. But if he falls to a team like the Jets who can't get anything right, who knows where he is in 3 years, right? So he's going to be an interesting prospect, but I think there's some boomer bust potential with him as well. All right, Alex, I'm going to start with a wide receiver, KC Concepcion, Texas A&M wide receiver. Look, I understand why so many people like this guy. On tape, he's an explosive playmaker. He's great with the ball in his hands. I understand why so many people have a first-round grade on this guy. Absolutely. Because the highlights on his tape are great. But when you peel back the onion a little bit, I have some real concerns about him. He had a lot of manufactured touches at Texas A&M. A huge chunk of his production, actually 21% of his targets were behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of manufactured gadget stuff with this guy. No 40 time on him. And I've seen some analysts and people question his true speed. Now, I think he can separate. I think he's shown he's a pretty explosive player, but I do question how fast he really is. Can he separate at the next level without the motions, without the screens? Look, he kind of reminds me of guys like Jalen Reagor and Kadarius Toney. Guys that coming out of college were dynamic athletes who just struggled to transition into being consistent NFL route runners because he's not a good route runner. I think that's something he really needs to clean up. Another big red flag that a lot of people have talked about, way too many drops. 10% drop rate in 2025. Actually, if you go back and look at his tape at North Carolina State, a lot of drops at that school as well. Short arms. So, you kind of have to wonder when he faces a different level of size, physicality at the NFL level, is that limited catch radius, is that going to be a problem against aggressive press corners? I think it could be. I think he has the potential to be a really good player, but I think he's a little more of a scheme-specific gadget guy, more so than a true wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Is he a gadget guy, or is he a legit wide receiver 1 type of player, wide receiver 2 at worst?
Yeah, and I think part of the problem right now is I've seen him, KC Concepcion, mentioned a lot in the top 5 wide receivers, especially with Jordyn Tyson dropping, that KC has been moving, that KC and Denzel Boston have more moved up, and they moved Jordyn Tyson to the back of the line in that. And when you're moving a guy who's strictly a slot guy, and it sounds like you could also be talking about Tavon Austin when you mentioned that, how limited he is in the game scheme. It's like you have to really worry about who you're drafting and what you're drafting for your team. Again, if you're going to a Sean McVay, if you're going to a Kyle Shanahan, perhaps they can put you in situations where a lot of that works. But for the most part, that's not a lot of these guys, even if they do come from the respective tree. So you have to be very careful in the receivers that you're taking and what you're going to be expecting from them on draft day.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't like the player. I think he has some legit upside for sure. And that's why he's in this group for me as a boomer bust guy. I mean, he's an explosive playmaker, especially when he gets the ball in his hands. So it's not like I hate the guy. It's just I've seen a lot of mock drafts where he's starting to get pushed up the board. To your point, Alex, he's starting to kind of climb these boards, and it looks like he's pretty much a lock to most people to be a first round pick. And I just don't know if he's worthy of a first round pick. I think there's better wide receivers that I have ranked in front of him that are probably going to go after him. And we could look back in this draft and say, yeah, he got a little overdrafted. And I think that could be the problem with him. And here's the other thing: he's a great kick returner. So I do want to mention that he does add value as a kick returner as well. So there is that to his game, which I understand. But how high do you draft a guy like this is the big question, and I think it's going to be a really interesting to see kind of where he fits at the next level. Look, these boom or bust type of players, this is how NFL drafts are won and lost. Not the safe picks. It's these guys right here that we talked about. These can be the differences in these drafts. If 2 or 3 of these players hit, you've got a playoff team. If they miss, you're resetting your roster in 2 years and probably getting fired. That's how important these picks are in the NFL draft. And that's why we highlighted it, guys. But that is going to do it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, PGF Nation. We have a bonus episode coming this week because we've got the NFL draft right around the corner. So we want to get out some extra content for you guys. So be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss those future episodes. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.